Thank you for joining us for the Colloquium for Advanced Management. My name is Kavitha Bindra. I'm the Assistant Dean for Alumni Relations here at the School of Management. And in the room, just to set the stage for our guest, we have students joining us from the School of Management's Master of Advanced Management program, though I see some students from other programs as well. We're also streaming this event live for our alumni, so hello to any of our alumni who've joined. I'll start off today's event with a series of questions focused on our guest's career, and we'll also touch on some topical issues we'd like for her to address, but I'm hoping to turn it over to all of you to ask questions as well. Our distinguished guest today is Weili Cheng. She's the Executive Director of the Yale Alumni Association, also known as YAA. She came to Yale from the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company, a subsidiary of Marriott International, where she was a senior vice president and deputy general counsel responsible for oversight of all legal matters relating to the company's operations, which included hotels, residential, and club properties in over 30 countries. As a member of the Ritz-Carlton Executive Committee, she also played an active role in shaping the company's global business strategies and policies across the Americas, Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Prior to joining the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company in 2007, Weili was vice president and assistant general counsel for the International Lodging Operations Division of Marriott. She held a number of leadership roles during her 30-plus year tenure at Marriott, including spearheading the company's China entry strategy, serving as chair of the company's Casino Oversight Committee and acting corporate secretary, and participating as a member of various corporate committees relating to diversity and women's issues. Before her tenure at Marriott, she was a trial attorney and an attorney advisor at the United States Department of Justice and an attorney in private practice. And I should mention, Weili just returned from a 3-week stint in Asia, so we're really grateful to have her here.
What it means is I might fall asleep in the middle of this talk.
So soon after her return. But I also wanted to mention, given that we're talking about alumni issues in a way today, Weili, I think, really exemplifies for me mentorship and guidance, and she's been a real mentor to me during my time at SOM. So with that, I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming Weili Cheng. So Weili, I touched on, I think, a number of things that you've done throughout your career, but I was wondering if you could give us a general sense for your career trajectory and what did you decide to do after you left Yale?
I'll actually go farther back than that and give you a brief sketch of my bio. I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I never planned to come to Yale for college. My father was a professor at the University of Hawaii, and he said to me, it's really not where you go to college that's important, it's where you go to graduate school. Being a professor, he assumed that everybody goes to graduate school. So I said, okay, and he said, so when it's time for you to go to graduate school, that's when we will send you to the mainland. So I said, fine. I'm happy to go to the University of Hawaii. And when it came time to apply to colleges, I dutifully applied to the University of Hawaii. But then I saw all of my friends applying to schools on the mainland. And I went to my dad and I said, I would really like to apply for fun to other schools. He said, fine, go ahead. And back in the day, you had to write to the admissions office and they would mail you an application. So eventually I accumulated 10 different applications and I sat in my bedroom wondering which one to fill out first. And I thought, oh, my friend Nancy from high school went to Yale. I'll fill that application out. And then I thought, oh, my friend Tina went to Stanford. I'll fill that application out. Well, I finished doing the Yale application and the Stanford application, and I thought, this isn't as much fun as I thought it was going to be. In fact, I look back, I wonder why I thought it would be fun in the first place. And I was spending $35 or $40 per application, and it was a waste of money because I wasn't even going to go. So then I got into Stanford and Yale and the University of Hawaii, and that changed things. So I wasn't really planning to go, but I suddenly realized that all of my friends were going away to college. My boyfriend at the time was admitted to Yale, and he was going to Yale. Another close friend of mine was going to MIT, and I did, like a teenager, was very influenced by what my peers were doing, and I did not want to be left behind in Hawaii. My father finally agreed that I could go to Yale for the experience. Stanford was too much like the high school I went to in Hawaii, and we had a saying, Stanford is standard. And so that's how I ended up at Yale. I tell you this story because you never know what's going to happen in life. You can have a plan, and then it doesn't happen, and you end up doing something different. And certainly for me, the decision to come to Yale made a big difference in my life and my career. I went to Yale. I graduated in '77 from Yale College, and then right after that, I went to law school at Georgetown Law. From there, I met my husband there, and ended up. There's another story about coincidences and how, you know, I am glad in retrospect that I went to Georgetown, but it wasn't my first choice. And that's because I did not get into my first choice law schools. But if I hadn't gone to Georgetown, I would have ended up marrying someone else. Again, another example of how you can have a plan, but sometimes unexpected things occur, and it all turns out for the best. After law school, we moved to Hawaii. My husband grew up in Connecticut and did not like working in Hawaii. He felt very isolated. Back then, I know it's hard for you to believe this, but back then, there was no internet. So you really did feel isolated. And so after a while, he said, I have to move back to the mainland. You can come if you want. And I said, what do you mean I can come if I want? We're married. So then we moved back to Washington, D.C. after some negotiation about where we would move to. And then that's when I went to the Department of Justice and then on to what was then known as Marriott Corporation for 31 years, and then I came here.
Great, thank you, Weili. So you just mentioned that you've spent about 30 plus years of your career at Marriott. And you know, I think many of the students here would agree in this day and age, it's rare to spend maybe even more than 2 or 3 years at one organization. So I'm curious to hear what kept you at Marriott. And then if you would maybe offer some advice to our students about what types of things they should look at when thinking about which organizations to join and which organizations to stay with in the course of their careers.
So what kept me at Marriott, the advantage of working for a relatively large company or a company with a lot of lines of business is you have the opportunity to move. And so I've had maybe 5 different jobs with Marriott, and the hospitality business was one that I really enjoyed. So yes, I'm very spoiled when it comes to staying in hotels, but it is a fun business because it's a people business. But not all hospitality companies are alike. And one of the things you should look at before joining any organization is the culture in that organization. I remember working at the Department of Justice. One of my good friends was named Joan. Joan and I left the Department of Justice at the same time. She went to work for a defense contractor, and I went to work for Marriott. Marriott, you know, because it's a hospitality company, the executives in the company had grown up in the ranks of the hotel business, and they were all very hospitable, very gracious, and warm and friendly, as you would expect hotel executives to be. And so the company culture, which was established by Bill Marriott and his father, was very warm and welcoming, very family friendly. So I had a great time. In contrast, Joan went to work at a defense contractor. And as a lawyer, we were both lawyers. And subsequent to arriving there, she found out that the culture was such that lawyers were viewed as deal breakers. And so people did not respect lawyers. People tried to avoid dealing with lawyers at all costs because they felt that the lawyers were going to not be helpful and were going to tank their deals. And it was not a good place for her. And I just fortunately ended up in a company with culture and values that that fit my culture and values. What also was helpful at Marriott was the general counsel at the time, a man by Sterling Colton. His father helped found the company with J. Willard Marriott Sr. And as a result, because of him, the law department was very respected. So whatever, I guess, so the takeaway is, if you're looking to go into a company, not only try to figure out and get a feel for the company's culture, but also get a feel for the division or office that you are going to be in and whether or not it's one that's respected.
And did you have a sense coming into Marriott that there was an upward trajectory for you? And how important is that when evaluating an opportunity at an organization?
I think it's important. It's not anything that I thought about at all. I just sort of made it happen.
Mm-hmm. And what qualities do you think helped you
my
grow?
My lovely personality. Seriously, when I was at the Department of Justice, I met someone who was an opposing counsel. And in court, he was horrible. He was just so despicable, just a real nasty attorney. But outside of the courtroom, he was a real gentleman. And I remember sharing a taxi with him, and he said that his mode of operation was to always be as nice as possible to all the people he encountered, because he said, you never know when you're going to encounter them next or what the circumstances are. And I thought, boy, that's really good advice. And that advice has stuck with me for over 35 years. So that's what I tell people who work for me. I always tell them how important personal relationships are. It goes beyond just being nice, but to the extent that you can develop and maintain personal relationships with people, it really helps. And I can go through and give you lots of examples of how that has helped me in my career.
Great.
So just one example. What I tell people who work for me is face-to-face meetings are really important in developing a personal relationship. So if you think about dropping into somebody's office so you can talk to them face-to-face rather than just sending them an email. If you need to send an email to confirm a conversation, you can do it after the conversation. But the advantage of a face-to-face meeting in someone else's office is that, some people have pictures of their family and their pets, and it gives you an opportunity to say, oh, is that your daughter? What's her name? Where is she now in school? And, if you let other people talk, they think you're a great conversationalist. And so what you try to do is get people to talk about themselves. And who doesn't like talking about themselves? I'm having a great time right now.
So going back to your earlier comments about having a life plan, you talked about some sort of unexpected occurrences. And, I think especially for probably a type A crowd that we have here, How do you deal with those unexpected occurrences, and how do you let that sort of shape you and move you in your career? And similarly, if you encounter a roadblock to something you were hoping to achieve, how do you overcome that?
Well, sometimes you have no choice but to face it and make the best of it. And I'll give you two examples. Well, I talk a lot to Yale College undergraduates, and at that stage, they think their career trajectory and their life is just one straight line. But you all have had more experience, so you know that it's not a one straight line. It goes like this, right? So I'll give you two examples, one professional and the other one personal, about challenges that I've had. So I spent the first part of my career at Marriott as a litigator. And we ended up with a new general counsel, and I had just finished working on the China entry strategy project. And Joe Ryan is his name. Joe came to me and he said, you know, do you really want to be a litigator for the rest of your life? You know, you should go into the business. You know, would you like to become a hotel executive? And I thought about it. I talked to other senior executives in the company with whom I developed a personal relationship so I could go and ask for their advice. And I went back to Joe and I said, you know, I really appreciate this opportunity, but I really like being an attorney. My identity is really wrapped up in this profession. But you're right. I don't want to continue to be a litigator for the rest of my life. What I want to be is an international lodging development attorney. And what that means is what I wanted to do and ended up doing was hotel deals. And I did hotel deals in the Caribbean, Latin America, and the Middle East. But to get there, you know, I went back to Joe and I said, you know, thank you for offering me the opportunity to be a business executive, but I want to do this development, international development work instead. And his response was, oh, well, you don't have any experience in that. Talk to, you know, the head of that practice group. So I walked into Fred's office, and he fortunately was a good friend and was the only one I had confided in about how I was just trying to decide between staying a lawyer or becoming a business executive. And I walked to his office. I said, Fred, I finally decided what I want to do. And he said, what? And I said, I want to come work for you. I want to do, you know, international lodging deals. And Fred said, I don't want you. And I'm thinking, Fred, I'm your friend. And he said, I said, why? And he said, well, you have a high title because you've been working here for a long time, but you have no experience in this field. And so he said, all right, let me think about it. So what Fred did is he went to every person on his team. The most junior person had more experience than I did. And he went with them and gave them a hypothetical. What if somebody senior from another group transferred into this group and that person had no experience? And they were all against it. And then he said to them, well, it's Weili. And they said, oh, it's Weili. We like Weili. It's okay. So that's one example of the importance of personal relationships that I had with all of these people on his team. So the long and short of it is that in order to change practice groups, I had to expend a lot of political capital and use personal relationships to convince everyone that this would be the job for me. Even Bill Marriott got involved. He said, oh, I think you should be doing something else. And I said, no, this is what I want to do. So I got into that job, and after 4 months, decided I did not like it. Mm-hmm. So that was really unexpected, an unexpected challenge, because I had thought I had wanted it, and then I realized that I didn't like it. I didn't like it because it involved a lot of drafting of contracts and a lot of time by myself. And I realized that when I was in litigation, I worked with a lot of people, right? You have to take statements from all the witnesses, you work with outside counsel, you sit in depositions, you're with people all the time. Doing the transactional work, I was alone much of the time, and I think I didn't like it. It was just me, a paper, and me and a computer. So that was quite a challenge. I had gone through life thinking of myself as an A student. And now, for the first time, I had encountered something that was really challenging. And in fact, that after 1 year, I did not get a raise because I had such a hard time. I was no longer an A student. I felt like I was a C student. And that was really disappointing to me. And it was much, much harder than I thought it would be to make that transition. So that was unexpected. Fortunately, shortly thereafter, Marriott acquired the Renaissance Hotel Group for, I think, $1 billion back then. And I was asked if I wanted to be an operations attorney. Fred came to me. We're doing this acquisition. Would you like to change? And I looked at him and I said, well, if I had wanted to be an operations attorney, I wouldn't have bothered being a development attorney. So I can't believe I was sort of pushing him away, despite the fact that the current job I had was one that I was unhappy in. Eventually, he convinced me and others convinced me that this would be good. And so I switched. So I was the lodging operations attorney for Asia Pacific, and then I became the lodging operations for all of Marriott's international operations, and then I went on to be global chief counsel for the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. I never would have been qualified to do the Ritz-Carlton job, but for that unhappy period of time when I learned how to negotiate lodging deals. And so things turned out, but just again, not in the way I expected. So when I speak to people about unexpected challenges, I tell this story and say that, you know, in everyone's life, there will be a job or part of a job that you do not like. In fact, I would hazard to say in every job, there's always going to be some part of the job that you will not like. You should use the opportunity to learn as much as possible, because that experience could, as it did in my case, enable you to be qualified and to get another job that you really like, because that's what happened to me. So that's the professional example that I have about dealing with an unexpected challenge. And in this case, it was, you know, really gunning for a job and then getting it and not liking it. The other example is personal, but all of these types of examples have to do with change. And I just want to say that, you know, the up and downs in all of our careers deal with change. And change, even when it's welcome, is stressful, and there's some anxiety associated with it, because you're not sure what you're getting into, even though you think you have done all your homework. One of my previous bosses used to quote General Shalish Kashvili. He was the head of the Veterans Administration, and what he would say is, if you do not like change, you will like irrelevancy even less. So that's how I approach changes, even the ones I do not like or do not want. And that's the example I will give you now. I was working on a hotel deal. Marriott, the deal was that Marriott was acquiring what was then the Hawaiian Regent Hotel in Waikiki. It was a really important deal for me personally, because it was going to be Marriott's flagship hotel in my hometown. Plus, it was a hotel that I used to go night clubbing in when I was in high school. So I had this sort of personal affinity for this hotel, which today is called the Waikiki Beach Marriott Hotel. Anyway, it was a big deal. It was the first time I was going to be in charge of the purchase of a hotel for the company. But the day before I was scheduled to leave to close on the hotel, I had a mammogram appointment. And I went to the mammogram. And for the guys in the audience, you probably have not had this experience of having a mammogram, but you get scanned. So they scanned me, and then you wait in the cold room. The room is always cold because they're machines. And I wait, and then the technician comes back and said, "We need another scan. The first one didn't turn out as well as we'd like." Scanned again. Technician leaves. I'm waiting in the cold room. She comes back. "We need another scan." And then I waited. And then when they needed another scan, then I was asked to wait in the waiting room. So I'm waiting, not thinking anything. And then a nurse comes out and says, "Your doctor is on the phone. He'd like to speak with you." And so I get on the phone and say, "Alan, what's up?" He said, "They found a lump in your breast, and they think it might be cancerous. I'm making an appointment with a pathologist for tomorrow." And I said, "I can't do it tomorrow. I'm flying to Hawaii to close on this hotel deal." And he said, "Weili, I think you really should do it." And I said, "Well, how long do I have? Is there any risk that the cancer will advance? How much time?" And he said, "Look, nothing's probably going to happen for a month. And so if you want to put it off, you could." And I said, "Well, this closing, I'll be gone for a week. I could come back and do visit the pathologist then." And he said, "No. I don't want you sitting on a plane worrying about this." And so he eventually convinced me. So it was really hard because I wanted to do the hotel deal. So I had to, from the doctor's office, call a colleague to say, "You're going to have to go and close the deal because I cannot go." And so then the pathology report came back. Yes, it was cancerous. And I had to go through surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. So I think of myself as a really energetic person, able to do a lot. And when you're in your career and a professional, you want to do your work. But I was very fortunate to work with people who are understanding and really, really supportive. And now when I look back, that was in 2000 and 2001. So I'm very fortunate because I'm fine. But it really taught me the importance of personal relationships. People would show up at my door with food. I remember one day my husband sort of mentioned casually that he was hungry. And I was very weak from the chemotherapy, so I wasn't cooking, but he was just mentioning it to me. Literally, as he said that, there was a truck from Ridgewell's that pulled up. So my home base is in Washington, D.C., and Ridgewell's is a really high-end caterer. So one of my clients had decided to send a turkey dinner for my family. And so we had great things like that happen. And so when I said earlier that when you have unexpected challenges, be they professional or personal, you just have to deal with them, especially health-related issues. Just 1 out of 8 women get breast cancer. There are more than 8 women in this room, just FYI. But looking back on my little cancer adventure, I can say while it was not fun to go through, it gave me a greater appreciation for what it means to be a friend and how important personal relationships are. So both examples of challenges, to me, what I get out of it is how important it is to have people around you who can support you and help you. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you, Weili. So switching gears a little bit, you're now at the Yale Alumni Association. And some of you may have heard of our alum, Mark Friedman from the class of '84, SOM graduate. And he started this group called the Encore Foundation, which talks about sort of life post-retirement. And he's really focused on what people make of that really productive time following your retirement from your primary career. And I'm curious whether you view your current role as sort of an encore career, and if you could tell us a little bit about why you decided to come here post Marriott.
Well, I have to admit that I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And by now, you could probably guess that I never had a career plan, and I'm glad I didn't, because things happen in life, and I look back, I have no regrets, and I'm very happy with how my career has played out. I was considering retiring from Marriott and Ritz-Carlton when I was encouraged to apply for this position at the Yale Alumni Association. What we haven't talked about is my activity as an alum. So it started very innocuously. I planned a picnic for the Yale Club of Hawaii. But then I started interviewing high school applicants to Yale College. And then one thing led to another. And as the years passed, I became chair of the Alumni Association's Board of Governors. And I sat on a number of committees appointed by the president of the university, and was very involved as an alumni leader. But sort of my main identity was as an attorney. So when I was approached about this position, I said I wasn't interested. But my husband said, "Oh, you'd be great at this. You spend so much time doing Yale work for Yale. Now you can get paid for this." And so I retired from Ritz-Carlton in March of 2016. And at the time, I was also teaching. I was an adjunct professor at Georgetown. So I was very busy, but again, I just thought of myself as an attorney. But I threw my resume into the pool, went to interviews, and a lot of people I interviewed with, I already knew, including President Salovey. So I've known Peter for over 20 years, because he and I, the first time I met him, he was dean of the graduate school, and he and I had sat on several committees and several boards over the years. And by the time I interviewed on campus and interviewed with him, the job sounded really interesting. And I had always really enjoyed working with Peter, so I pursued it. And when I was offered the position, I hesitated. The reason I hesitated was because I felt that I was throwing away my entire professional career as an attorney with both hands. And I decided to call a friend I knew since freshman year at college, who now has her own executive search firm. And I called her up, and she said, "Oh, Weili, a few months ago, I recommended you for a job, that job at the Yale Alumni Association." And I said, "Well, Anne, thank you very much, but that's why I'm calling. I have a job offer, but I don't know. I think of myself as an attorney, and I've worked so hard over 35 years in my career, and now I'm throwing it all away." And she asked, "Well, what do you want to do next?" And I said, "Well, it would be nice at some point to become president of a nonprofit." she said, okay, well then there's no doubt about it. You have to take this job if that's what you want to be. So I said, okay. So I took the job and have not looked back. So I've been in this position for 2.5 years. And you know, it's really different from what I used to do. Because when you're a lawyer, you give advice and you provide guidance. Certainly being a lawyer in-house gives you more leeway to make business decisions. And because I was chief counsel and part of the executive team at Ritz-Carlton, I got involved and made a lot of business decisions, more so than usual. But it is really different being the executive director of the Alumni Association for a couple of reasons. First, I think the largest staff I managed prior to moving here to Yale was maybe 15 people, and I now have close to 40. That has, let's say, fostered my growth in management. Also, working with alumni, and you're all going to be alumni soon, and I hope to have an opportunity to get to know you better in that capacity. But what I've learned is that at any given time, there are groups of alumni who are unhappy about something, very unhappy about something. And a lot of times they're unhappy about things I have no control over. So recently, I've received a spate of emails from alumni leaders whose kids did not get into Yale College, right? The decisions were released on Friday. So over the weekend and today, I've gotten a lot of emails about that. I have no control over that. But the challenge is I want to continue to engage alumni. You know, at Ritz-Carlton, people would also complain, customers. Some of them would write 6 pages handwritten complaining about something. And my boss had the CEO of Ritz-Carlton had a really good attitude about that. He said, these are our best customers. They don't want us to make a mistake. That is the reason they take the time and make the effort to communicate with us. So that's the attitude I have about alumni who are unhappy. They are unhappy because they feel so invested in the university. And that's the other reason why this job is challenging, but in a good way. So in my previous job, and in the business world generally, people make decisions based on expected financial returns or pride or ego. In the hotel business, we have owners, usually owners outside of the United States, would build a Ritz-Carlton hotel as a trophy and for purposes to support their ego. Or people build hotels because they expect a certain financial return. It's all professional, but those are the sort of the 2 reasons. In alumni land, it's not professional, it's all personal, and you're dealing with people's emotions. So I spend all my time trying to manage people's emotions because Yale, for them, is a very special place, and they take everything very personally. So that's the other challenge. But I have to say, I'm privileged to spend a lot of time with alumni who love this place, and that's nice to see.
So I have one more question before I turn it over to the group here. And you have, as you mentioned, a group of future alumni here. I'm hoping you can give a very quick overview of what the Yale Alumni Association is and what that'll mean to this group when they complete their studies here.
Certainly. This is like my little commercial about the Alumni Association. What we try to do is engage alumni in support of each other and of the university. So we did an alumni survey a few years ago. because I wanted to know whether or not the programs that we administer were ones that would engage the alumni. So I asked the alumni, you know, what do you want to learn about? What do you want to do? The number one area of interest for alumni is lifelong learning. The number two is career and professional development. So we do a lot of other things, but in the first category, lifelong learning, we have a number of programs and we're going to have more. So I'll talk about three programs. One is travel with Yale faculty. So we have Yale Educational Travel that organizes 50 to 60 trips a year to just all over the world. It could be a river cruise down the Danube. It could be, we have a lot of cruises and a lot of land programs. So in the Galapagos, all throughout Asia, in every part of the world. Next year, maybe it's this summer, viewing of the eclipse from a desert in Argentina, I think. So that's one example of a learning program. Another example is Yale for Life, which is a one-week intensive seminar with professors. And participants typically read 3,000 to 5,000 pages. And at the end, you have someone like Henry Kissinger show up to talk with the group. We also have Yale Alumni College, which is a once-a-week session with a professor for 6 weeks, and it's held in DC, San Diego, Princeton, New York City, New Haven, and a number of other cities. So we also have webinars and lectures. In the area of career and professional development, we are doing a number of things. We have a program called Careers Life in Yale, where we typically it's a two-part session. The first part is all about practical skills, how to write a resume, how to interview, how to network, how do you manage your time. And the second part of it is career specific. So we had one on big data, we had another one on careers in STEMs, and those are on our website, the Yale Alumni Association website. We also support 180 Yale clubs around the world. Wherever you go, there will be a Yale club. Outside of the United States, most of the people who are active in Yale clubs are from the graduate and professional schools. In the US, it's flipped. It's usually the other way around. So I just came back from Hong Kong, Beijing, and Shanghai, and there are a lot of SOM alumni there, as you know, Kavitha. So we support clubs. We also support Yale College classes, and there are about 70 of them. And we have quinquennial reunions. So every 5 years, a class has a reunion. We have a communications and finance team, and we support connecting alumni online. We also have shared interest groups. So shared interest groups are groups of alumni that are bound by careers or interests. So we have the Yale Alumni in Real Estate group. We have Yale Tech. We have Accelerate Yale, which is about entrepreneurs. And we have the Yale Black Alumni Association. We have the Asian American Association of Yale Alumni, and the like. We are starting to put together Yale gatherings around conferences. So every year, JP Morgan has a healthcare conference in San Francisco. So this year, in January, we're definitely going to put things together for that. We have a lot of alumni who are interested in the biotech field, and the host will be someone who is in venture capital. and supports biotech ventures. Anyway, we do great work, and I hope you will become engaged. Once you graduate, you will start getting emails from me. I hope you open them.
The funny thing about working with alumni relations is that you learn the word quinquennial, which I'd never come across before. So I'd like to open it up to the group for any questions. We have about 10 minutes or so. So I'll open it up now. Yes?
Yeah. So based on your experience, I understand destiny has played a huge role in your life.
I'm sorry, what has played a huge role?
Destiny, because you said things don't happen the way they are. If things are supposed to happen, they will. That's what you're trying to say. But then what about your free will, whatever you want to do, whatever you choose? How do you reconcile the two?
That's interesting. Okay, so the question is, things happen to you, and how do you reconcile the fact that you may want to do something and things don't turn out? So there have been examples. So it's speaking up. So I wrote down 3 pieces of advice, but one of them was to speak up when you want to do something, and that's what I did at Marriott. So I was at the time I decided to do international lodging development. I was the first person that ever was allowed to transfer. There have been others since, including the company's current CEO, Arne Sorensen. But you speak up. You know, I think I went through the first part of my career thinking, you know, my job is to work hard and to excel, which is fine. But I had always assumed that if you do an excellent job, get a good performance review, that people will say, oh, well, then she should be promoted. It doesn't work like that. If you do a really good job, people think, oh, they're happy in what they're doing and they're doing such a good job, we'll leave them there. So if you want to get promoted, seek out the person who makes those decisions and ask for their advice on what you can do as your next step. So you have to do it tactfully, otherwise you will be branded a self-promoter, and nobody likes a self-promoter. Anyway, so the answer to your question is if you see something that you want to do, you should speak up.
Yes.
So I had the opportunity to go to the conference on Saturday. It was a fantastic conference on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I was wondering, you mentioned during the opening of the event that the Alumni Association is going to be hosting a number of other events. Can you let us know a little bit further? What have you been thinking? What types of events you're planning in the future from the Yale Alumni Association?
We have a lot of events. I just met this morning with one of my direct reports, Steve Bloom, who's in charge of career and professional development. He has like 5 events in April. So I would direct you to the website.
From that magnitude.
Oh, of that magnitude, conferences. We will have another one next year. I don't think we have another one scheduled for the rest of the year. In part because April and May are very busy with us, because we're preparing for reunions, those quinquennial reunions. When we have 7,300 alumni and friends come back to campus. And in the hotel industry, I'm in awe when a hotel hosts a conference of 1,000 people where they have one program with different breakout groups, but all the meals are together. When we host and support reunions, it is over 7,000 people spread out in different buildings across the campus, not just in one hotel. And there are, 7 to 14 different meal plans and programs. So that we hire about 150 students, including graduate and professional school students, to help us put on the event. So right now, that's what we're focused on. We have lots of other events, but they're smaller in scale. The next really big one will be in 2020. It will be the symposium celebrating the 50th anniversary of women in Yale College and the 150th anniversary of the first woman at Yale.
And I think just to tack on to what Weili said, one thing that's really interesting about the YAA events and conferences is that while they are driven in large part by the staff here in New Haven, they're really dependent on alumni engagement and involvement, and in many cases are actually driven by groups of alumni around, who coalesce around a common purpose. So, if there are things that you're interested in doing once you become an alum, the YAA can help facilitate that, and my group here at SOM can help facilitate that. But a lot of the activity that happens is really sort of grassroots, coming from the alumni and their interests. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
I want to take the opportunity to clarify that Kavitha and her staff support events for SOM alumni. My staff supports events for all alumni, including SOM alumni. I'm glad you're able to come to the conference. Somebody?
Over here.
You talked about the importance of maintaining relationships, and I feel like that's really critical, especially in this stage in your career. It's easy to get distracted by family and your career, and it's easy to let the relationships and friendships fall by the wayside. So how did you keep it top of mind, and what actual, tangible things did you do to maintain relationships?
Maintaining relationships does take a lot of time and energy, and it has to be a priority. They're friends of mine I will be out of touch with for many years or decades, but I will reach out to them and then, you probably see this in your own life, and it's as if time had not passed. But it takes effort. Somebody, yes, in the back row.
Thank you. Thanks for coming here to share with us today with your stories. I just wonder, when we make decisions, there's always people that are not happy with the decisions. I just wonder how you handle those negative emotions internally. And yeah.
So when I make decisions and people are not happy with those decisions, I think it's really important for the people who are unhappy to feel that they have been heard, and so it's important to listen. There was reference to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Conference that we had this weekend, but we had someone talk about the importance of listening. And Professor Joyce Mercer said that listening is recognition, and people need recognition. And so when you come across someone who's not happy with the decision, at least listening to them and letting them know that you heard them goes a long way to helping them feel better about you. They're not happy with this. So in this position, I have made decisions that certain alumni still are not happy about, but I've spent a lot of time talking to them one-on-one. And they're still not happy, but I had good reasons for making those decisions. So listening.
We'll take that question and then one more question here.
Okay.
You mentioned that you never make career plans. I'm wondering, during your career, when you have some concerns or some, you don't know what to do in your career, do you have any mentors help you to get your career development?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. Sorry.
Sorry, the question is, do you have any mentors help you to get your career development? Since you mentioned that you never had, you never make career plans.
Yes, I did. Absolutely, I did.
Can you tell us a bit more about your mentor?
Sure. There's one Marriott executive in particular who I happened to be working with at the time I was given the opportunity to move from the law department into the hotel business. And he told me I should stay a lawyer. And we had a good conversation about it. And every time, and through the years, he's continued to be a friend and a mentor. So Marriott's a big company, but I, at some point, was very ambitious and I wanted to move up in the company. And he said, look, you don't realize how high up you are. If you think of the company as a pyramid, you're really at the top. Not everybody can go that much, not everybody can be at the very top, but you're really high up. And that was sort of helpful to know. Of course, I didn't like hearing that, but that was very helpful to know. So having mentors is important.
We have that last question over here.
Thanks a lot for sharing your story. I was wondering, so you worked in Ritz-Carlton Hotel for 30 years?
I worked at Ritz-Carlton for 9 years.
Okay.
But it's part of Marriott.
But it's part of Marriott, so my total time at Marriott was 31 years.
Yes, I was wondering what led you to stay in one company, because I think you might have received the offers from other peers or other industry.
I liked the company, and I had different jobs. So I started as a litigation attorney, but then I told you the story about how I decided I wanted to be an international lodging development attorney. And so then I changed to that. And then from there, I went to international lodging operations for Asia Pacific. And then I got promoted, and then I got promoted again. And along the way, I was also very busy doing Yale Alumni volunteer work. And I have to say, that volunteer work really helped me professionally. It taught me how to give speeches. It taught me how to run a board meeting. And those two things really helped me in my professional career. So going back to the question why I stayed with one company for 31 years, it was because I had the opportunity to do different things and change jobs.
And they recognized your talent and wanted to keep you there.
I don't know if they recognized my talent, but I did say, you know, I'd like to do something different. So I did speak up.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll close on that note. I don't know if there's anything you want to say.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here with you and look forward to working with you, and congratulations on where you are in your careers.
Great. Well, join me in thanking Weili for joining us.